Hey guys, Coach Kuiper here again with another installment of Kuiper's Coaching Concepts. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the lower half of the pitching mechanic. More pitching today, talking lower half, and specifically we're going to talk about lower back half, the lower leg, the drive leg, and what to do when you might be having some problems with your mechanics, your delivery, your motion. And we're going to talk about symptoms and causes and going to expose you to a number of drills that you might be able to do to help work on some backside drills. So if we just get into it, what am I talking about? Here are some symptoms that you can look out for, whether you're a player analyzing yourself, whether you're a coach or parent. What do I mean with backside and maybe some symptoms and problems? The number one thing that you'll probably see very easily is a player who throws and collapses this back leg in. It's the symptom being this lazy leg, and it kind of just drags along it's along for the ride in the throwing mechanic. That's one of the things. You might not recognize the lazy back side, the lazy back hip or leg, but you might just look like the player has a poor follow through, maybe an incomplete follow through. Some other things that you might notice, even just wondering why does my player, why do I as a player, or why does my son or player on my team, why don't they have the velocity that their peers have, or how do we get them more velocity? Those are maybe some symptoms and things you're looking at. And then another one that might cause you to think that there's some backside issues is if the player happens to be very vertical upon the throw. If they're trying to pitch and they're standing straight up, it might have to do with poor utilization of this lower half on the backside specifically. So those are some of the symptoms that you might watch out for. But what causes these things? I think it's important before we go into the drills to talk about what are some of the causes. And I also should pause real quick and say, I'm not reinventing any of these drills. I'm not reinventing this material. I'm just putting it online and collecting it so that you guys can have yet another resource out there to try some things and work on your own mechanics and get a little bit better. So hopefully you find these things helpful, and don't be afraid to look around YouTube and the internet, try to find some other drills that you might like. So again, there's a million different drills. I thought I would expose you to some that I've liked over the years, and I've forgotten about a few of these drills until I did some searching. Some of these drills I had done 15 years ago, and forgot that I liked them. Some I liked, some I didn't. But that's also part of it. Is if you try different drills, some are gonna click for some players, some are gonna click for others. So that's why I'm gonna show you a few. All right, so going back to, hey, what causes this what I would call a lazy backside? It's really not the right word. It's not anyone being lazy. It's more of an underutilized back leg and drive leg. And really what is causing this is like I said, it's a poor utilization of this hip as the player lands and gets ready to rotate these hips. What's happening is this player they're really used to throwing with just their upper half. So if they're used to throwing with just upper body, they don't need their lower half. So that's kind of where they're capping out with their velocity. Maybe they've got good arm action, but they just let that leg drag along. You can throw modestly hard with just good upper half mechanics, but you're really sacrificing extra velocity if you don't incorporate the lower half. And by not rotating these hips and activating these hips first, we're going to talk about hip and shoulder separation another time, which could help utilize the lower half a little bit, but it's not the primary reason why somebody is not utilizing the lower half. But if your players are able to get a better understanding of after they get to foot strike, if they can keep those hips closed, and by closed I mean if you're a righty towards third base, if you can keep those hips closed, then your hips start to fire naturally. As you pull down, that back leg is going to come up. And so what you'll see a lot of these kids will do is either they'll swing the gate open and just collapse and pull in because they're just used to being hips and shoulders right at home plate and pulling down with just their arms. That's one of the causes, one of the things you'll look for that might have a player develop these habits of just pulling that back leg along for the ride rather than using it to translate the energy from the lower half through the core in this trunk rotation and then out through the arm and the baseball. So let's get into the drills. I'm going to start with one of the most common drills you'll probably ever see, and it's easy because it provides instant feedback for any player of any level. I like this drill because of its simplicity. I would say that it doesn't really fix anything. It just raises awareness to an issue. So keep that in mind when you think about this drill, and it's just called the bucket drill, okay? I'm gonna, even though I'm on the mound, I'll be facing you all, so I'll be pitching up the mound a little bit. But essentially what you're gonna do is you're going to put a bucket just about even with the player's plant leg, okay? So you can have a player just throw a regular baseball and have them throw and see if that knee comes in and hits the bucket, or if they throw and follow through up over the bucket, okay? You should be able to get up over it. And again, this isn't telling a player's body or mind why they're not doing it. It's just reinforcing, hey, don't forget about it. Maybe it's a skill they've been working on and they just need this visual or physical reinforcement. It also can help raise awareness to a kid if that's what they're doing. So that's the standard bucket, over the bucket drill. Very, very simple. Let's see here. So what I'd like to do is then use let's just use this same bucket in a variety of ways. This one's probably gonna be a little bit harder for me to show given the uphill, but the other is from the side. So if we're trying to help a player understand how to use the hips and fire the hips before firing the upper half, so it's not just throwing all upper half, what you can do is start to take the lower half out of it a little bit. So you can take this bucket. If you don't have a bucket and you have a chair nearby, you can use the chair. Essentially, you can put the players in their load position and then just have them put their back leg on the bucket. Okay, so now you can even give a little rock and pull and come from there. So you get hip activation, and hopefully it will help a player realize how to activate hips first. It's because they don't have anything to push off with. They probably weren't pushing a lot, but they had this maybe drift and glide followed by the upper half working. Here, it might force the player to realize, I need to move the hips first, get the hips going. All right, so that's the side bucket drill. The other one that you can do using a chair or bucket is you can do a seated bucket drill. Okay, so kind of like the last one, but maybe a little different, is you can start from a seated position and you can push off with your back foot and try to stand up and throw. This one may or may not click for some of the guys. This is a little bit more focused on back leg drive, but some of these things are connected. It's worth a shot. Plus, there's different drills that, again, click with different players. But this is one that you can incorporate too. See if it helps a player understand what's going on with their backside. All right. So I'm talking about bucket drills. There's the first three that I think are real easy. The next ones, you don't even really need a ball and a glove for. Got my set of tools over here. The next one, so I used to, when I was trying to explain this to some players, I try to think about, okay, if they've already activated their hips, or maybe they haven't, but they just need to understand what's going on in the mechanics and the motion, I might even just take them on the towel. So I think you may have remembered the towel drill where you're going to simulate the pitching motion and use a towel to do so. Okay, but what you can do to take a step further is, and I'll do this sideways here so you can see it, is do the same towel drill, but let's get out onto the front leg. Okay, let's get out, and what I like to call it is a seesaw, teeter-totter. You've heard me talk about equal and opposite before. When our arm is pulling down, when we're pulling down at the last minute, that pull down of the front arm should almost yank up that back leg, because you're translating the energy through the lower and the upper and you're pulling down. Hopefully, if you've done that correctly, the pull down of the baseball is going to want to make that equal and opposite pull up with the back leg. If we can get rid of the back leg off the ground sort of and do some of these towel drills, you can almost just have a player rock and pull down. If you don't have a partner who's got a glove out, you can use this bucket again as your target, and you can rock and pull. And I'm worried about the absolute follow through as I am the teeter-totter effect of rock and pull down. So you get the point there. Towel drill, maybe using a bucket, maybe not. The teeter-totter, the equal and opposite. All right, along that same vein, here's another one you can do. Now, I don't have a medicine ball here, so I'll use this basketball to simulate it, but you can do a variety of medicine ball drills to help understand a player. Maybe they're vertical, or maybe they're not getting that idea of translating energy and pulling down, which will help help that backside get the feeling of going up. Again, that doesn't solve the problem. These are just tips and techniques of how to help diagnose and maybe how to reinforce a mechanic without a player necessarily dialing exactly into the cause. Trust me when I say that there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, a lot of different ways to solve a problem, and sometimes you have to almost attack a problem sideways, if you will, in order for a player to get something to click. It feels right. Oh, I got it. So these are just a variety of drills to help with that concept of attacking it from different angles, see what works. There's no one size fits all in baseball. Going back to that last drill, so we were teeter-tottering, you might take the same approach with a medicine ball. I don't know the exact weight. If I had to guess, I'd probably say, I don't know, maybe an 8 or 10 pound ball, but it's going to depend on the age and strength of a player. But essentially you can take a medicine ball and pull down and throw it. By doing that, ideally you're going to have the player start to really feel more of what's going on in this upper half as they pull down, and ideally, you know, they should have that backside come up. I can't imagine. I have not done this drill in quite some time. In fact, that's what I meant is I did this drill in college, but I had forgotten about it. It'd been so long. But if you are pulling down with that upper half, it really should help. Now, is it going to stop a person from pulling down and collapsing? It actually might. I believe that it could help a player understand that with all that weight out in front of them, that it's going to feel more weird to pull out and collapse in as opposed to pulling out and letting it come back up to balance. All right, so along that same vein again, I don't have the clips. I don't have a fence right here that I'm going to record with, but the idea here is I used to do this when I was playing in the minor league ball, independent leagues, a variety of teams. I had one of the pitching coaches work with me quite a bit on some of these heavy bands. And we would go through a series of exercises to reinforce a variety of concepts. But much like the heavy ball there, you can take these bands and really force that emphasis on pulling down. Is it solving anything? Not necessarily. It's reinforcing a proper mechanic. And if you can take some of these things, these drills, and if you can have a player warm up and maybe they're doing these towel drills, these bucket drills, these med ball drills, and immediately go throw a baseball right after, and you remind them, throw a baseball like you threw the medicine ball. Throw a baseball like you did with the towel drill or the bucket drill. If you can have players try to simulate the mechanic, then have them translate it into the throw, that's where I think you're going to see the connection and the improved mechanics. Another drill that you can do is when you're warming up is just take your partner as you're throwing and just do one leg throws. So let's get onto our front foot, take our lower half. Let's take this underutilized backside, take it out of the equation. So if I want to throw a baseball, instead of I'm not going to just sit here and throw. If I try to turn and throw, and I want to start doing this harder and harder, I'm going to have to rotate these hips and then pull, and ideally it should help the player feel the transfer of energy starting with the hips. Let's get rid of that lower leg that was maybe underutilized. Think about the teeter-totter, the towel drill that I was showing, the med ball. Maybe you do those drills first, and then you come to this. You do your flips and your facing loads. Maybe even do some side loads, and you start working on getting over the bucket. But one of the things you can do is incorporate this one-legged throw. Get on your front leg. I would start with your hands together, rotate, and throw. Okay? Or heck, just have them start wherever they feel comfortable and just have them try to coil and uncoil. And by doing that, ideally they should start to feel the hips loading and unloading. And this, I think, is a really good drill that starts to help a player feel a little bit more of the cause of the thing, the root cause. Can be hard for kids to take this to the next one, but just again, yet another drill. Give it a shot. I hope it helps. Okay, so we did some bucket drills. We did a variety of drills without a baseball. Here's another one that I really like that for me helped me continue to understand what's going on with the hips, the shoulders, the upper half. Is let's just take arms crossed. You know, you can get rid of the glove, you can keep it if you want, but what I like to do is I like to have pitchers get out into that landing, that power T position, and then have them rotate, have them go through from this load position to their release position and follow through, and have them pull down and exaggerate the hip action. Let's get an exaggeration just for point of emphasis. And I believe that if you just have this isn't exactly how you're going to teach it, but if you have the players yank down that front shoulder and replace, let's do it this way. If you have a player replace that front shoulder with the back shoulder and just yanking down a little excessively, again, for point of emphasis, but if you're going to have a player yank down, okay, I'm in my load position, I got the nice wide base, you can't see from the side, and I yank down, it's going to really force a lot of torque and a lot of energy coming from that back leg. So if I should want to rotate the hips violently during this drill and over exaggerate just to start to get some of these players who might not really feel what's going on in their own back leg until they exaggerate and make it come all the way through. These are drills that any player can do at any time before practice, like that last one. A few of these, the band work you can do before practice, during BP, if you're in college, etc. Anytime, anywhere. And shoot, you've seen me just do pretty much darn near all these drills without a partner. So there's really no excuses for us to not get better. But again, it's figuring out which drills really help you make the connection between what I need to feel and what I need to do versus what I was doing and where I was at. That pretty much sums up the backside lower half drills that I would want to go over. If you find any more that you particularly like, I would love to hear from you. I can add them on in here. Part of the reason I do these videos isn't because I'm creating new content necessarily for the world of baseball. I'm just collecting it in a place. I found that some of the really good videos that I like on YouTube, I'll go back and reference them, and next thing you know, they've been taken down or they're gone or somebody's selling them for money. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to just keep all these resources together for us as a community so that we have something to look back on. But one of the next things, and the last thing before I go, is just talking a little bit about, I know I mentioned at the beginning, the hip and shoulder separation. And for those of you who may or may not know, is we talk about landing with our hips closed, and then as we're coming through from our load to our release position, how our hips are going to open up, and we're going to want to keep our shoulders closed as long as possible. So once our hips fire and our hips start coming forward, and if I can keep some of this upper half separation, it's going to allow, if we translate that energy from lower to upper, if you think about twisting a rubber band or anything that you're twisting, it's going to want to untwist. So if we can twist just to a little bit, hips are closed, they open, keep the upper half closed, and then it's going to come through. That's what I'm talking about there. These drills I just mentioned, a number of them, you could utilize them for the lower half, upper half, hip and shoulder separation. We could talk about some over the shoulder med ball drills, things like that. But I'm going to save that maybe for another time. I think really getting a better understanding of what I find is more people who already have problems with the lower half as opposed to cleaned up mechanics that need, I see fewer people who are struggling with the hip and shoulder separation than I do with poor backside. So that's why I kind of made this video. I hope you like it. I hope you found it valuable. And if you have any other ideas for backside drills that you'd like to see discussed or included, put them in the comments below. Appreciate you watching. See you next time.